So we have invited somebody from the European Commission. Kristian Schmidt, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. You are the Director for Land Transport at the European Commission.
That's correct.
Are you following the news of today, the new package of sanctions? Are you involved in that in any way?
Yes, of course, involved, because there is also a dimension of the package that the Commission has put forward that concerns land transport. So yes.
And can you tell us something already?
Well, I can tell you what the Commission has proposed. Council now has to decide, but this is, of course, the fifth wave of sanctions that we are proposing from the Commission side in response to the Russian aggression and, of course, the atrocities that we now know have been committed. There are a financial dimension. 4 more Russian banks are being proposed. Exports of goods from the EU on critical goods. As was mentioned by the previous speaker, we are proposing to ban the import to the European Union of Russian coal. And of course, in the transport sector, both for shipping, we are proposing to ban the docking of Russian flag vessels to EU ports, and also, and that's the area that I'm responsible for, a ban on Russian road freight for Russian haulers and Belarusian haulers into the territory of the European Union, except if they are carrying certain goods, such as medical, pharmaceutical products, humanitarian transport, etc., and a number of strategic goods that are in the EU interests to receive. So this is what the Commission is putting on the table, and now it's for Council to decide.
Yeah, and as I understand now, so no restrictions on rail movement.
Well, not in the new package, no, but as I'm sure previous speakers and the audience is aware, the Russian railways is subject to financial sanctions. And for that, of course, we have seen an impact, as was mentioned also by the previous speaker, in terms of demand and dropping. There's the issue of insurance. We're well aware of that. And of course, there is a chilling effect, generally speaking, on that business. But it's correct that Russian railways, as such, have not yet been targeted by EU sanctions.
Yeah. Would you be able to answer why rail is getting that privilege, actually?
Well, I wouldn't call it a privilege, but it's clear that whenever the Commission is putting forward proposals, we are looking at hurting Russia and the balance of EU interests as well. Here, Russia is a land bridge, really, between China and the European Union. So we have to carefully assess whether it's in our interest or not to affect that business.
Yeah. All right. How do these sanctions so far, and maybe even the new sanctions, impact the supply chain, in your opinion?
I think there's no doubt that we are seeing an impact on the supply chain. I just want to make absolutely clear, sanctions in this case, and as in all cases, always cut both ways. There are no sanctions that you impose that does not impact the European Union itself, except, of course, if they are individual sanctions targeting decision makers. So, of course, there's an impact on our supply chain. We are very much aware of it, and the proposals that we are making are calibrated on the basis of that analysis. Of course, I mean, for instance, here we are talking rail, so I know for a fact that most of Europe's rail supply industry has stepped back from the Russian market. And this, of course, has an impact on EU industrial interests. So, but whenever we discuss this, let's always, first of all, keep in mind the impact on Ukraine and the Ukraine situation. And of course, there are costs to the European Union, but this is the result of war.
Yeah, I think from most of the companies' responses, we also understand that most people are willing to support these sanctions, or at least even choosing not to transit through Russia. But at the same time, we also hear that there is a reduce of 80% of volume, so businesses do get hurt. Is there some way of supporting these companies from the EU Commission?
Well, first of all, I think the market, the operators, should look for alternatives. And I'm well aware that the Northern Corridor has grown immensely over the years, and there is no brilliant alternative to that. I heard the previous speaker talk about the Middle Corridor. This is something the Commission is certainly studying, and we will intensify the studies of the feasibility of that. It is, as the previous speaker was saying, slightly more tricky, several countries, intermodal across the Caspian and the Black Sea. But nevertheless, despite these difficulties, we see it growing, and we think it should be studied. With regard to the impact, of course, as you may know, the Commission has issued several decisions allowing state aid to compensate, allowing member states to compensate for companies' undertakings that are suffering as a result of the sanction package that has been adopted. It isn't specific to rail, it isn't specific to transport, but it certainly covers transport and rail as such. So yes, there is a way to support companies who have seen this negative impact of the sanctions.
All right. And when you say we're studying the alternative as the Middle Corridor, what do you mean by studying? Are you studying a way to support it, or to have more capacity on that route?
Yes, absolutely. So studying means study. It means first talking to the countries on the Middle Corridor and see what are the specific difficulties. But it also, of course, eventually can generate investments in some of these partner countries, whether it's in Georgia or in Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and others. And I must say, I mean, Kazakhstan, on their own initiative, has come to us and asked, what can we do? Because they of course, are affected. So these are partner countries on the way between China and the EU market, where we are discussing opening other routes. Again, we're well aware that this is not a solution for tomorrow, and therefore the impact on the EU-China link, of course, is undeniable. Again, this is an issue for, I would say, foreign policy and discussions with China, that China is also affected by the war in Ukraine and therefore also has a role to play in resolving it.
Yeah, because I think one of the conclusions of the 23rd EU-China summit last Friday was that the EU was asking China to actively mediate, but at the same time, China was asking the EU to support Chinese businesses. How have these relations between the EU and China changed? What can it mean for this situation right now?
Well, I mean, I was not at the EU-China summit, so let me not speculate on what was said. I think the role of mediation is difficult. What I'm saying here is that this is an issue where both the European Union has interest, but certainly also China has interest in addressing this in order to preserve the trade relations between our countries. But at the same time, I know that European industry and businesses, of course, are searching for alternatives, and we in Europe must be aware also of our dependencies and the need to diversify for the sourcing of input to our strategic sectors. So I'm afraid this is so serious. This war is such a shock to peace and security in Europe that it frankly cannot be business as usual, and therefore it is affecting everyone.
But would you say the relationship between the EU and China has gotten stronger or has deteriorated?
Well, I'm no longer dealing with foreign policy, so let me not speculate too much on that. But this is a challenge to our trade relationship, of course. We're seeing a corridor, a transport corridor that was growing well and very fast, carrying great volumes, and now it's impacted. Even if it doesn't go through Ukraine, certainly there is an impact here. So that's a challenge to our relationship, our business and trading relationship, and it must be on the table, as I'm sure it was during the EU-China summit.
Let's just one last critical question on that. Let's say that China decides to support Russia financially. What would then be the response of the EU? And how
you should ask that question to the High Representative and Vice President of the European Commission for Security and Foreign Policy.
But how would it impact your relationship in terms of the BRI? That's actually what I mean to ask.
Well, I mean, whether you call it the BRI or not, China is an essential part of the European supply chain, and therefore, I wouldn't assume that would change overnight because of the war with Russia. So we must find ways to invent alternative modes of transport. Yeah. I should also say, because we're talking about goods and freight, but I also want to recognize the enormous contribution that European railways and undertakings have made in addressing the refugee situation, carrying free of charge Ukrainian refugees to safety across the border in Europe and beyond. This is really impressive. And I think, okay, our focus, of course, should be on the link with China and exports in general, but it should also be to build stronger rail links, including rail freight links with Ukraine. My discussions with the Ukrainian counterparts have been very clear on this. The Black Sea ports are blocked. As you know, Ukraine is also an important partner for the European Union. It is an important player on global food security markets. It is one of the greatest importers of grains and cereals, and therefore Europe has every interest in keeping that trade going. And therefore, I would also just put on the table and to the audience in this conference the need to strengthen rail links and rail freight links with Ukraine. This is, for me, for the moment, my top priority, also on road to ensure that the Ukrainian economy keeps running in order to safeguard the life and the lifelines across to Europe.
And also because there's a lot of people fearing a lack of bread and grains, and even some serious problems in terms of food supply as the grain market is collapsing.
Well, I think inside Ukraine, the Ukrainian ministers are telling us that they have made provisions for that. It is a country that is a food net exporter, and a big one. So it's simply a matter of distribution and protecting the stocks inside Ukraine. No, I mean, what they are really telling us is that unless they are able to continue exporting their grain and empty the silos in order for the planting and harvesting season, you break the cycle of harvesting, exporting, and revenue from exports fueling the Ukrainian economy. And that, of course, would be disastrous and lead to a general weakening of the country. And I guess that's what Putin wants. So we should not let it happen. We should not let it happen. Also because Ukraine will need to stand on its own feet with our support for reconstruction of all the damage that has been done. Personally, I was down at the Polish-Ukrainian border in the middle of March, and all the refugees I saw there, by the way, women and children only, no men in fighting age, they were all desperate to go back. Yeah. They are not seeking to stay in Western Europe. Some of them have taken shelter and been offered safety, but all of them are desiring to go back, rebuild their country, reunite with their families, and therefore this should be, and that is very much certainly my department's attention for the moment, to keep those transport corridors working so that the economy will not collapse.
Yeah. All right. Well, I would like to thank you very much for your clarifications, and I, of course, wish you all the best in doing this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.